The war room fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. 47 species, represented by their finest military minds, sat in circular rows around the massive chamber. At the center, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly, showing swaths of red overwhelming the blue territories of the Galactic Council. The red represented the Velthar swarm, and it had consumed 80% of known space. Admiral Hyun Park stood at the center podium, his insectoid features showing no emotion, but his antennae drooped with defeat. The Zenthari commander had led fleets for 3 centuries, and never once had he called a meeting like this. Around him, representatives from dozens of worlds waited. Some had scales, others had feathers. A few existed as pure energy contained in crystalline shells, but all of them wore the same expression of hopelessness. Sentinel has completed its final analysis, Hyun said, his voice translator converting his clicking mandibles into galactic standard. Please present your findings. A column of blue light materialized beside the admiral. The quantum artificial intelligence known as Sentinel had no physical form, only data and probability. Its voice was calm, mathematical, without any trace of fear or hope. Analysis complete. The Velthar Armada will reach the Arcturus system in 48 hours. Total enemy vessels, 473,000. Total Council vessels remaining, 12,000. Enemy combat efficiency, 97.3%. Council combat efficiency after recent losses, 41.2%. Probability of successful defense, 0.00%. A collective murmur rippled through the chamber. Some delegates activated translation devices, certain they had misheard. Others simply stared at the numbers floating in the air. 0? Asked a Morthian counselor, her crystalline body refracting light in patterns that indicated distress. Not even 1%? Correct, Sentinel replied. All conventional strategies have been calculated. Fleet dispersal, extinction in 3 days. Concentrated defense, extinction in 2 days. Retreat to outer systems, extinction in 7 days. There is no mathematical path to survival. Captain Daeho Kim sat in the back row, his weathered human face studying the display. He was 47 years old, with graying hair at his temples and scars on his hands from a lifetime of military service. The patch on his uniform read Terran Defense Force, and he was the only human in the room. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 60 years ago, and humanity was still considered a minor species by most standards. Daeho raised his hand. Admiral Hyun's compound eyes focused on him. Captain Kim, do you have input? I have a question for Sentinel, Daeho said, standing up. His translator rendered his Korean into galactic standard. You said all conventional strategies fail. What about unconventional ones? The AI paused for exactly 2 seconds, an eternity for a quantum processor. Please specify. Daeho walked down the steps toward the center platform. Every eye, lens, and sensory organ in the room tracked his movement. The Velthar operate as a hive mind, correct? They have a central command structure, correct. The Queen Mind coordinates all Velthar forces from the primary vessel, a biological construct approximately 40 kilometers in diameter. Then we cut off the head, Daeho said simply. A small strike team infiltrates the Queen ship and destroys the neural command center. Without coordination, the swarm becomes chaotic. The room erupted. A dozen species began speaking at once, their various languages creating a cacophony, until the translation systems caught up. Infiltrate, bellowed a Corvan general, his trunk-like appendage slapping against his chest. The Queen ship is surrounded by 10,000 Guardian vessels. Suicide, clicked a Viridi captain. Pure suicide. Admiral Hyun raised one clawed hand for silence. Sentinel, calculate the probability of Captain Kim's proposed strategy. The AI processed for 5 seconds this time. Strike team composition, 10 personnel. Approach vector, stealth insertion through asteroid field. Infiltration method, hull breach at waste disposal port. Target, central neural nexus. Probability of mission success, 0.0001%. Daeho smiled. It was the kind of smile that made other humans nervous and aliens deeply confused. Perfect odds. Did the translation malfunction? Asked a Zenthari counselor. The human appears pleased with near-certain death. The translation is accurate, Sentinel confirmed. Captain Kim's biometric readings indicate genuine satisfaction. Daeho walked to the holographic display and pointed at the Queen ship. Every species in this room is looking at those odds and seeing failure. I'm looking at them and seeing a chance. Humanity has won battles with worse odds than this. Impossible, stated a Dravixian admiral flatly. Probability does not favor such outcomes. Probability doesn't know humans very well, Deho replied. He turned to face the assembly. 300 years ago, a handful of Terran colonists held off an invasion force on Titan. They were outnumbered 30-1. They weren't supposed to survive the first hour. They held for 6 weeks. He moved around the display, his voice growing stronger. 200 years ago, Earth faced a plague that should have killed 90% of our population. We were given a 5% chance of species survival. We cured it in 18 months. Anecdotes are not strategy, Admiral Hyun said, though his antennae had perked up slightly. You're right, Deho agreed. Strategy is what Sentinel does. But Sentinel calculates what should happen. Humans specialize in what shouldn't happen but does anyway. A new voice spoke from the upper tiers. I will join this mission. Every head turned. Dr. Jiwon Choi descended the steps, her crisp Science Corps uniform marking her as the chief AI specialist aboard the human vessel Indomitable. She was in her mid-30s with sharp eyes behind frameless glasses and hair pulled back in a practical bun. Dr. Choi, Admiral Hyun acknowledged, you are one of our finest minds. Surely you understand the mathematical impossibility. I understand that Sentinel is calculating based on known variables, Jiwon said, reaching the center platform. But humans are an unknown variable. We don't process risk the same way other species do. When other species see 0.0001%, they see the 99.9999% failure rate. We see the 0.0001% success rate. Another figure emerged from the human delegation section. It was Yuna Lee, a young pilot barely into her 20s, with short cropped hair and the confident swagger of someone who had never met a flight challenge she couldn't handle. I'll fly them in, Yuna announced. Give me the fastest ship you have and I'll get them to that queen ship. Admiral Hyun looked at the 3 humans standing before the entire Galactic Council, volunteers for a suicide mission, and something shifted in his ancient warrior's heart. These humans had been in the galaxy for barely a lifetime, yet they stood ready to die for species they had known for less than a century. This is madness, muttered the Corvan general. Probably, Deho agreed, but it's our kind of madness. Admiral Hyun's mandibles clicked in what might have been a sigh. Sentinel. Update mission probability with human psychological factors included. The AI paused longer this time, unable to accurately calculate. Human decision-making patterns do not follow logical probability matrices. Historical data suggests outcomes that should be statistically impossible occur with unusual frequency when humans are involved. So you're saying there's a chance, Deho said, that smile returning. Admiral Hyun looked at the 3 humans, then at the map of their dying galaxy, then back at the humans. Captain Kim, you are authorized to assemble your strike team. You will have access to our fastest stealth corvette. You depart in 6 hours. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different energy. Not hope, exactly. The other species were too logical for that, but perhaps something close to it. A willingness to believe that maybe, just maybe, these strange humans with their backwards way of looking at mathematics might actually know something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. As the council adjourned, Deho gathered his small team. Lieutenant Minho Kang, a demolitions expert with a dark sense of humor, clapped him on the shoulder. So, Captain, we're really doing this? Flying into certain death? Not certain, Deho replied. 0.0001% uncertain, Minho laughed. Those are perfect odds. In the observation deck, Counselor Vexthra watched the humans prepare. The reptilian diplomat had studied many species, but humans continued to confuse him. They knew they would probably die. They knew the numbers. And yet they smiled and joked and prepared as if they had already won. Perhaps he thought that was their secret. They decided the outcome first, then made reality conform to it. The Velthar swarm was coming. The galaxy would likely die, but as Vexthra watched the humans board their vessel, he felt something he had not felt in months, curiosity about tomorrow. The stealth corvette Longshot broke away from the Arcturus defense fleet exactly 6 hours after the council meeting. It was a sleek vessel, built by the Zenthari for reconnaissance missions, painted in a color that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Inside the cramped cockpit, Yuna Lee's hands danced across the controls with practiced ease. "Course set for the Velthar staging area," she announced. "Travel time 20 hours if I fly normal, 15 if I fly like a human." "Make it 15, Deho said from the command chair behind her. "We don't have time to waste." In the cargo hold converted to a mission briefing room, the strike team gathered. Besides Deho, Jiwon, Yuna, and Minho, there were 6 others. Young Ensign Sunho Bayek, barely 19 years old, sat at the communications station with nervous energy. The rest were humans pulled from various military branches, each one chosen because they had survived situations they shouldn't have. Back at Arcturus, the Galactic Council monitored their progress through quantum-linked displays. Counselor Vexthra stood in the observation center, watching the small ship's trajectory weave through space. Admiral Hyun joined him, his antennae twitching with what humans might call anxiety. "They are maintaining radio silence as planned," Hyun said. "Sentinel continues to update probability calculations. Current success rate, 0.0008%. "It's getting worse," Vexthra observed. "No," Hyun corrected. "It's getting more accurate. Sentinel initially calculated based on perfect conditions. Now it accounts for actual hazards, Velthar patrols, radiation storms, equipment failure. And yet the humans proceed." Hyun's mandibles clicked softly. "That is what makes them interesting." Aboard the Longshot, Jiwon had connected her portable computer to the ship's systems, reviewing every piece of intelligence they had on the Velthar. The information was disturbing. The swarm consumed everything: resources, technology, biological matter. They left behind dead worlds, empty husks stripped of anything useful. "Captain," Jiwon called out, "I'm seeing something in the historical data." Every species the Velthar encountered tried the same approach: direct military confrontation. The Dravixians threw 5,000 battleships at them. The Corvin megafleets engaged them in 17 major battles. All failed. "What's your point?" Deho asked, moving to look at her screens. "My point is that everyone fought them the way Sentinel would fight them. Maximum force, optimal tactics, perfect probability calculations, and the Velthar defeated them all." She looked up at him. "Maybe that's why we have a chance. We don't fight like a computer thinks we should." Minho walked over, carrying a crate of unusual devices. "Speaking of not doing things the normal way, I finished modifying the charges. These explosives use a neutrino trigger mechanism I invented yesterday." "You invented it yesterday?" Jiwon asked, alarmed, more like finished inventing it. "I've been working on the theory for years." Minho grinned. "Never tested it in actual combat, though. Probably a 30% chance it works perfectly. 40% chance it just doesn't explode. 20% chance it explodes too early. And 10% chance it creates a small black hole." "Those numbers don't add up to inspiration," Jiwon said. "That's the spirit." Minho laughed. Hours passed. The Longshot flew through sectors of space that had been populated star systems mere months ago. Now they were graveyards. Yuna navigated through debris fields where entire civilizations had once thrived. Sunho monitored communications, listening to the eerie silence where billions of voices should have been. "I'm picking up something," Sunho suddenly announced. "Velthar patrol patterns. 3 scout ships moving in our direction." Sentinel's voice crackled through the quantum link from Arcturus. "Probability of detection, 87%. Recommend course alteration." "Negative," Yuna said, her eyes focused on her displays. "Course alteration will add 3 hours to our journey. I'm taking us through. The mathematical probability," Sentinel began, "is something I'm going to ignore," Yuna finished. "Strap in, everyone. This is going to get interesting." In the Arcturus Observation Center, every sensor operator watched in disbelief as the Longshot accelerated directly toward the Velthar patrol. The alien species present began calculating survival odds, most arriving at numbers below 1%. Yuna threaded the Corvette through an asteroid belt at speeds that would have torn apart most ships. She flew between chunks of rock with meters to spare, her hands moving faster than conscious thought. The Velthar scouts detected something, their sensors painting the asteroids with scanning beams. But by the time they focused on where the Longshot had been, it was already somewhere else. "Impossible," breathed a Zenthari sensor operator. "Those maneuvers violate 3 different laws of physics." "No," Admiral Hyun said quietly. Those maneuvers violate 3 different laws of common sense. Physics is still intact. Inside the long shot, the crew experienced gravity shifts that would have knocked out most species. Humans, with their stubborn cardiovascular systems and their bizarre ability to stay conscious under extreme G-forces, merely gritted their teeth and held on. "Clear," Yuna announced after 10 minutes of controlled chaos. "The scouts never got a solid lock on us." "Sentinel," Deho called out. "Update our probability. 0.0005%, the AI responded. Human pilot performance exceeds calculated parameters by 300%. Unable to explain, Counselor Vexthra leaned toward Admiral Hyun. "How do they do that?" "I have studied human biology," Hyun replied. "When faced with danger, their bodies produce a chemical called adrenaline. It enhances physical performance temporarily, but that alone doesn't explain it. I think there's something else." "What?" "They believe they will succeed. Not hope, not wish. Believe. As if they have already decided the outcome, and the universe simply hasn't caught up yet." The hours continued to pass. The crew settled into a routine of preparation and nervous energy. Deho walked through the ship, checking on each team member. He found Sunho at his station, the young ensign's fingers flying across his keyboards as he analyzed Velthar communication patterns. "Finding anything useful?" Deho asked. "Maybe," Sunho replied. "The Velthar communicate through biological radio signals. It's like one massive conversation involving millions of voices all at once. But I'm noticing something strange. There are tiny delays, microseconds, between when the Queen Mind sends a command and when the individual units respond." "Why is that important?" "Because it means the hive mind isn't instantaneous, there's a lag. If we can exploit that timing, we might be able to move through their defenses during those microsecond gaps." Sunho looked up at his captain. "It's a really small window. Like impossibly small." Deho smiled. "Son, we're already on an impossible mission, might as well stack impossible things together." In her corner of the ship, Jiwan was doing something that horrified Sentinel. She was manually modifying the AI's own code, adjusting probability matrices to include what she called human factors. "Dr. Choi, those modifications are not supported by mathematical evidence," Sentinel protested. "That's the point," Jiwan replied, her fingers dancing across holographic keyboards. "You calculate what should happen based on known physics and biology, but humans operate on something else. Call it stubbornness, call it stupidity, call it hope. Whatever it is, it changes outcomes. Hope is not a variable that can be quantified." "Then you're using the wrong equations," Jiwan said. "Because hope has saved humanity more times than logic ever did." Minho interrupted by playing music through the ship's speakers. It was an old Earth song, something with guitars and drums and a singer screaming about not giving up. The other crew members started singing along, badly and off-key, but with genuine enthusiasm. Counselor Vexthra, watching through the quantum link, was baffled. "They are flying toward near-certain death and they're singing?" "That's what they do," Admiral Hyun said, and something in his translated voice suggested he might be smiling, if Zenthari could smile. "They sing, they joke, they make everything into a challenge they can win. It's infuriating and inspiring at the same time." The long shot passed the point of no return, crossing into the space where the Velthar Queen ship waited. Sensors began detecting the massive vessel's presence, a gravity well so large it bent light around it. "Captain," Yuna called back, "we're approaching the outer defense grid. This is the big one. Once we cross this line, there's no going back." Deho stood up and moved to the cockpit. Through the viewport, he could see distant shapes moving in the darkness. Thousands of Velthar vessels circling their queen ship like antibodies protecting a cell. "Sentinel, final odds before we commit," he said. 0.0002% chance of success, the AI replied. "Captain Kim, I must protest this course of action." "Protest noted and ignored," Deho said. He turned to his crew. "Everyone ready?" They answered as one. "Ready. Yuna, take us in." The young pilot's hands moved, and the long shot dove toward the heart of the swarm. Behind them, in the Arcturus, Observation Center, every species watched in silence. They were witnessing either the bravest moment in galactic history or the most foolish. Possibly both. And somewhere in her calculations, Sentinel made a note that perhaps she needed to understand these humans better. Because the numbers said they should turn back, the logic was clear. The probability was against them. But they went forward anyway. Perhaps that was the human factor no one could calculate. The Queen ship was not like any vessel the Galactic Council had ever built. It was not made of metal or composite materials. It was grown, a living thing the size of a small moon, its surface pulsing with biological processes that defied conventional understanding. The outer hull was covered in what looked like veins, each one thicker than a city street, pumping nutrients and energy through the massive organism. Una flew the long shot through the outer defense grid using a technique she had invented during her flight academy days. She called it threading the needle, though her instructors had called it reckless endangerment. The technique involved calculating the exact moment when enemy sensors switched between targets, then moving through the gaps in their coverage. The gaps lasted for nanoseconds. Human reaction time shouldn't be fast enough, but Una wasn't reacting. She was predicting. 2 degrees port, Sunho called from his station. He had his eyes closed, listening to the rhythm of Velthar communications. The patrol ship on our left is about to turn. We have a 4-second window. Una adjusted course without questioning. The long shot slipped past a Guardian vessel so close that the biological vessel's sensor tendrils actually brushed against their hull, but they weren't detected. In the Arcturus Observation Center, a Corvan admiral made a sound that the translators rendered as impossible. Impossible, impossible on repeat. Sentinel, Admiral Hyun said calmly, though his antennae were rigid with tension. What is the updated probability? 0.00002%, the AI responded. Human crew continues to perform beyond calculable parameters. Counselor Vexthra, who had not moved from the observation window in hours, spoke quietly. They're going to die. All of them. And yet I cannot look away. Neither can I, Hyun admitted. The long shot reached the Queen ship's outer surface. Up close, the living vessel was even more horrifying. The hull was made of what appeared to be compressed organic matter. Layers upon layers of consumed worlds pressed together into a shell. Una found what they had identified on scans as a waste disposal port. A sphincter-like opening that occasionally expelled processed materials into space. That's our entry point, Daeho said. Everyone suit up. We're boarding in 5 minutes. The crew donned environmental suits human-designed with emergency systems that other species considered paranoid. Multiple redundant oxygen supplies, backup power cells, emergency beacon transmitters. Humans, having evolved on a planet that tried to kill them regularly, believed in preparing for the worst. Minho checked his modified explosives one last time. If these work the way I designed them, the neutrino triggers will pass through any shielding the Velthar have. If they don't work, well, we'll be too dead to complain about it. Very reassuring, G1 muttered, but she was smiling. There was something liberating about knowing the odds were so terrible that worrying seemed pointless. Una brought the long shot alongside the waste port during one of its purge cycles. The sphincter opened, expelling a stream of processed materials, and she flew directly into it. The maneuver violated every safety protocol in the Galactic Flight Manual. It was also brilliant. They passed through a biological airlock system, the ship's sensors screaming warnings about the corrosive atmosphere and crushing pressure. But the long shot held together, its Zenthari engineering proving worthy of human recklessness. They emerged in a massive internal chamber, a digestive cavity filled with organic processing mechanisms. The smell, even through their suit filters, was overwhelming. We're inside, Daeho announced. Sunho, let Arcturus know we made it. Then maintain communication silence unless emergency. Yes, sir, Sunho replied, his young voice steady despite the fear they all felt. The team disembarked from the long shot, leaving 2 crew members behind to guard their escape route. 8 humans ventured deeper into the living ship, their weapons ready, their hearts pounding, their minds sharp with adrenaline. The interior of the Queen ship was a nightmare landscape. Everything was biological, from the floor that squelched beneath their boots to the walls that pulsed with rhythmic contractions. Tendril-like structures hung from the ceiling, and occasionally they would brush against the team, causing everyone to flinch. They followed G1's navigation, working from scans that were only partially accurate. The Queen ship's interior was constantly changing, growing, adapting. Hallways would shift, new chambers would form, old ones would collapse. It was like navigating through the digestive system of some cosmic beast, which in a way they were. 2 hours into their infiltration, they encountered their first Velthar warrior form. It emerged from a wall cavity, a creature that was part insect, part machine, all horror. It was 3 meters tall, with blade-like appendages and a sensor cluster that might have been eyes. Minho fired first, his plasma rifle sending bolts of superheated energy into the creature. It screamed, a sound that resonated through biological radio frequencies, alerting others. The team moved quickly, running through corridors as more warriors emerged from walls, floors, ceilings. They lost Private Taewon during that first encounter. The young soldier grabbed by a warrior form and pulled into the organic walls before anyone could react. They lost Corporal Murray in the second encounter, covering the team's retreat with a smile on her face and a grenade in her hand. "Keep moving," Daeho ordered, his voice hard. Grief was a luxury they couldn't afford. In Arcturus, Sentinel updated its calculations. 0.00001%. 2 casualties. Mission viability decreased significantly. "They're still moving forward," Admiral Hyun observed. "Why? Why not retreat?" "Because they're human," Counselor Vexthra said, and there was something like understanding in his voice now. "They don't calculate the odds during the mission. They decided before they left. The universe just hasn't informed them of their death yet." Jiwon led the team deeper using the neural network she had hacked into. The connection let her sense the ship's layout, but it also exposed her to something disturbing. She could feel the Velthar consciousness, billions of minds thinking as one, and underneath it all, she sensed something she hadn't expected. Hunger. Not the casual hunger of missing a meal, but the desperate, consuming hunger of starvation. The Velthar weren't evil. They were dying, and in their desperation they had become monsters, Captain, she said, her voice shaking. "I'm sensing something. The Velthar, they're not conquering for power. They're consuming because they have to. It's their biology. They need exotic matter to survive, and that matter only exists in sufficient quantities in developed star systems." "Are you saying they're starving?" Daeho asked. "I'm saying they're desperate, which makes them more dangerous." They reached a junction where 3 biological corridors converged. Sunho checked his scanner. The central chamber should be through there, about 300 meters ahead. The passage was narrow, forcing them to move in single file. The walls pressed close, pulsing with whatever served as the Queen ship's heartbeat. Minho set charges along their path, insurance for their escape route. The modified explosives hummed with contained power, waiting for his signal. They emerged into a cathedral of flesh. The central chamber was enormous, a space so vast that their lights couldn't reach the far walls. In the center, suspended by organic cables thicker than ancient earth trees, was the Queen Mind. It was beautiful and terrible, a mass of neural tissue and biological processing centers. It glowed with bioluminescent patterns that might have been thoughts made visible. Around it, thousands of Velthar warrior forms stood motionless, waiting. "We're surrounded," Minho said calmly. "If we detonate now, we might take out the Queen Mind, but we'll never make it back to the ship." Sentinel's voice crackled through their communication link. "Final calculation, 0.00001% chance of success. Captain Kim, mission is unviable. Recommend immediate detonation and acceptance of casualties." Daeho looked at his team, 5 humans remaining, standing in the heart of an enemy vessel, surrounded by thousands of hostile organisms, about to complete a suicide mission that would at least save the galaxy, even if it cost their lives. "Recommendations noted," he said. "But I have a different idea." "What idea?" Sentinel asked. "We're going to do something no one expected." Daeho lowered his weapon. "We're going to talk." The Velthar warrior form stirred. The Queen Mind's bioluminescence increased, patterns shifting rapidly. Through her neural connection, Jiwon felt something that might have been curiosity. "Captain, that's insane," Minho said. "Probably," Daeho agreed. "But we're humans. Insane is what we do best." "Jiwon, can you establish communication?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I can try. But Captain, if I open a full neural link with the Queen Mind, I might not come back. Their consciousness is so much larger than mine." "Then don't go alone," Daeho said. He moved to stand beside her, placing his hand on her shoulder. One by one, the other team members did the same, forming a chain of human contact. We go together. Ji-won took a deep breath, adjusted her neural interface, and opened the connection fully. The Queen Mind's consciousness flooded into them like a tidal wave. It was too much, too vast, too overwhelming. Ji-won felt herself drowning in billions of thoughts, millions of voices, an eternity of hunger and desperate need. But then she felt the others. Daeho's steady determination, Minyo's dark humor even in the face of death, young Sunho's hope, the other team members' courage. Human consciousness, small and finite compared to the Velthar collective, but burning with an intensity that the swarm had never encountered. Through that connection, Ji-won did something impossible. She showed the Queen Mind Earth, not just the planet but its history, the ice ages that should have killed humanity, the asteroid strikes, the plagues, the wars, every extinction-level event that humanity had survived not through superior strength or intelligence, but through sheer stubborn refusal to die. And then she showed the Queen Mind something else. The possibility of survival without consumption. In the Arcturus Observation Center, every sensor screen went blank for 3 seconds. When they came back online, the vital signs of all 5 humans were spiking into dangerous territory. "What are they doing?" Bexthra demanded. Sentinel was silent for a long moment. Then unknown. This action was not in any calculated scenario. Unable to predict outcome, Admiral Hyun watched the displays. They're improvising. Improvisation is not a strategy. For humans, Hyun said quietly, improvisation is their greatest strategy. The neural connection was like standing at the edge of an infinite ocean. Ji-won could feel the Queen Mind examining the memories she had shared, processing them through billions of individual Velthar consciousnesses all thinking as one. The weight of that attention was crushing, but the human team held together, their linked minds supporting each other. Through the connection, the Queen Mind communicated. Its thoughts were not words but concepts that translated into understanding. Ji-won heard Daeho gasp beside her as the full weight of the Velthar's desperation became clear. The Velthar had not always been a swarm. Once, millennia ago, they had been peaceful. They had built civilizations, created art, explored their star system with curiosity rather than hunger. But their biology required exotic matter, a rare element that existed naturally on only a handful of worlds. They had mined their home system's resources carefully, sustainably. Then came the disaster. Their star began dying faster than predicted. They had 2 choices: stay and face extinction or leave and find new sources of exotic matter. They chose survival. The first few worlds they consumed had been uninhabited. Then they encountered other species, and the hunger, the terrible hunger, had made them into monsters. "You consumed civilizations to survive," Ji-won said through the neural link, her voice echoing in the vast space of the Queen Mind's consciousness. "Yes," came the reply, carrying the weight of billions of regrets. "We became what we most feared. But to stop consuming is to die. There is no alternative." "There is always an alternative," Daeho said, his mind joining the conversation. "That's what makes us human. We don't accept no alternative. We make new ones." The Queen Mind's attention focused on him with an intensity that would have killed most beings. Daeho stood firm, his consciousness a small bright flame against the darkness of the swarm's vastness. "Your species should have perished," the Queen Mind observed. "The data you shared shows this. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed half your population. Your world tried to destroy you repeatedly, yet you survived. Explain this." "We're stubborn," Daeho replied simply. "When the universe says we should die, we say no. When logic says there's no solution, we invent one. When the odds are 0.0001%, we figure that means we have a chance. This defies mathematical probability. Probability is just what happened in the past. Humans specialize in what hasn't happened yet." Minho's consciousness entered the conversation, his mind still carrying that dark humor even here. "The way we see it, extinction is permanent. Trying something crazy is temporary. Even if crazy fails, we're no worse off than if we did nothing." Young Sunho added, his voice nervous but determined. "My grandmother survived the Tokyo crisis. The odds said she should have died. But she told me she survived because she decided the odds were wrong. She made her own odds." The Queen Mind processed this. The concept of choosing one's own probability was alien to the Velthar, whose entire existence was based on biological imperatives and hive coordination. Individual will subsumed into collective necessity. You are saying we should simply decide not to hunger. This is impossible. No, Jiwan said, her scientific mind finding solid ground in the metaphysical conversation. We're saying you should hunger differently. You need exotic matter. Fine. But you don't have to take it from living worlds. Humanity has been creating synthetic exotic matter in laboratories for 40 years. The yields are small, but we've never needed to scale up production. Give us 30 days. Let us prove we can feed your swarm without you having to consume another civilization. The chamber erupted with movement. Thousands of Velthar warrior forms shifted, their biological radio frequencies creating a cacophony of communication. The Queen Mind was debating with itself. Billions of voices arguing across millions of individual organisms. 30 days, the Queen Mind finally said. In 30 days, our fleet will complete its consumption of 3 more star systems. Trillions of beings will be processed into resources. This is our survival. Or, Deho countered, in 30 days you could have a new way to survive. One that doesn't make you into murderers. Murderers, the Queen Mind repeated, tasting the concept. We are survivors. You can be both, Deho said quietly. We humans know that truth better than anyone. We've done terrible things to survive. But we've also learned that survival without morality isn't living. It's just continuing. The Queen Mind fell silent. The pause stretched for so long that the human team began to worry the connection had broken. Then finally a response came. You believe you can sustain our fleet? 300,000 vessels, each requiring exotic matter equivalent to a small planet's worth every cycle. I believe we can try, Jiwan said. And if we fail, you're no worse off than you are now. But if we succeed, you stop being monsters and start being people again. Another long pause. Minho kept his hand near his detonator, ready to complete the original mission if this gamble failed. But something had changed in the Queen Mind's thought patterns. Jiwan could feel it through the connection. Hope. A tiny, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, these strange humans with their impossible odds and their refusal to accept mathematical reality might actually be right. 30 days, the Queen Mind agreed. But you must understand, if you fail, we will consume your homeworld first. Not from cruelty, but because Earth is rich in exotic matter. Your species will be processed last so you can witness the cost of your hope. Fair, Deho said, though the word cost him something to say. But when we succeed, you join the Galactic Council. You become part of the civilization you've been destroying. That is premature negotiation. That's human optimism, Deho replied. We already decided we're going to win. Now we're just planning what happens after. The neural connection severed. The 5 humans stumbled backward, their minds suddenly empty of the vast consciousness that had filled them. Several team members fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sudden silence. The Velthar warrior forms parted, creating a path back to where they had left the long shot. You may leave, the Queen Mind said, its voice now coming through their suit radios instead of their minds. You have 30 days. Do not fail, the team ran. They ran through the biological corridors, past warrior forms that watched but didn't attack, through the sphincter port where the longshot waited. Yuna had the engines warm before they were fully aboard. What happened in there? She demanded as they strapped in. We made a deal, Deho said, collapsing into his chair. 30 days to give the Velthar a reason not to destroy the galaxy. Did we just trade certain death now for probable death in a month? Minho asked. Probably, Deho admitted. But it's a month we wouldn't have had otherwise. That's what humans do. We buy time, then we make something impossible happen in that time. Yuna launched the longshot away from the Queen ship. This time the Velthar fleet didn't try to stop them. The Guardian vessels actually moved aside, creating a corridor back toward Council space. In the Arcturus Observation Center, chaos had erupted. Sentinel had detected the team's departure from the Queen ship, alive and apparently unharmed. More shocking, the entire Velthar fleet had stopped moving. The armada that was supposed to reach Arcturus in hours had simply halted in space. They're not advancing, a Zenthari sensor operator reported, his voice high with confusion. The entire swarm has stopped. Sentinel, Admiral Hyun demanded. Explain this. Unable to explain, the AI replied. This outcome was not in any calculated scenario. Requesting data from the longshot. When Sunho transmitted their report, the observation center fell absolutely silent. Every species present tried to process what they were hearing. The humans had not destroyed the Queen Mind. They had negotiated with it.
They talked to it?
Counselor Vexithra said, his translator struggling with his tone of disbelief. They flew into the heart of the enemy, surrounded by thousands of warriors, and they talked? That's the report, Admiral Hyun confirmed. And the Velthar agreed to stop? For 30 days? Based on a promise that humans could create enough exotic matter to feed an entire fleet? Yes, Vexthra sat down heavily. They changed the mission. They were supposed to destroy the Queen Mind. Instead, they saved it and promised to solve an impossible problem in 30 days. Impossible problems are what humans do, Hyun said, and if Zenthari could smile, he would have been smiling. Sentinel, what is the probability that Dr. Choi and the human scientific community can create sufficient exotic matter to sustain the Velthar fleet? The AI processed for several seconds, calculating based on current human technological capabilities, available resources, and time constraints. 12%. 12%, Vexithra repeated. That's significantly better than 0.0001%. That's probably how the humans saw it, Hyun said. They were already on a suicide mission with almost no chance of success. Why not trade it for a different mission with slightly better odds? The Longshot docked with the Arcturus station 6 hours later. The human crew disembarked to find themselves surrounded by representatives from every species in the galaxy. Some looked at them with awe, others with confusion, a few with what might have been the beginning of hope. Daeho stood before the assembled council and made his report formal. The Queen Mind has agreed to a 30-day ceasefire. In that time, humanity will work to create a sustainable source of exotic matter for the Velthar. If we succeed, they join the council. If we fail, then he paused. If we fail, Earth becomes their first target. You bet your entire species on a 12% chance? A Corvan admiral asked. 12% is great, Daeho replied. We went into the queenship with 0.0001%. We're improving. Ji-won stepped forward. With council support and resources, I believe we can increase those odds. Every species here has contributed something to galactic science. If we work together, we might actually pull this off. Admiral Hyun's antennae vibrated in what his species used for laughter. You humans are either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most insane. Why not both? Mino suggested. The council voted. The decision was not unanimous, but it passed. Humanity would have its 30 days, and every council species would contribute what they could to the effort. As the meeting adjourned, Counselor Vexthra approached Daeho. Captain, I have studied many species, but I think I finally understand what makes humans unique. What's that? You don't calculate whether something is possible before you attempt it. You attempt it, then make it possible through sheer stubborn will. Vexthra's translator carried something that might have been respect. It's terrifying, but also inspiring. Daeho smiled his trademark smile. Give us impossible odds and we'll show you what terrifying inspiration looks like. The clock had started. 30 days to save the galaxy. For the first time in months, the Galactic Council felt something they had forgotten. Hope. The Arcturus Science Complex had never seen anything like it. Within hours of the Council's vote, every species had sent their finest minds. The sprawling facility, designed to house perhaps 200 researchers, now contained over 3,000. Zenthari quantum physicists worked alongside Dravixian matter specialists. Corvan engineers collaborated with Viridi biochemists. And at the center of it all, coordinating the chaos, was Dr. Ji-won Choi. She had not slept in 40 hours. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking from too much coffee, but her mind was sharp as a blade. Around her, holographic displays showed 100 different research threads, all attempting to solve the same impossible problem: how to create enough exotic matter to feed an interstellar fleet. The theoretical framework is sound, she explained to the assembled team leaders on the second day. Exotic matter can be synthesized by colliding particles in specific quantum states. The problem is scale. Our largest particle accelerator can produce maybe a gram of exotic matter per month. We need to produce megatons per day. Impossible, stated a Dravixian physicist flatly. Probably, Ji-won agreed. But we're going to do it anyway. That's the human way. Sentinel had been integrated into the research effort, its vast computational power turned toward solving equations that had stumped galactic science for centuries. But even the quantum AI was struggling. Current projections show a maximum production rate of 0.3% of required amount, Sentinel reported on day 3. Probability of success decreasing, now at 8.7%. Then we need to think differently, Ji-won said. She gathered the senior researchers in her lab, a space that had become command central for the entire operation. We're approaching this like a conventional engineering problem. But humans don't solve impossible problems conventionally. What do you suggest? Asked a Zenthari physicist. We're thinking too small. One facility, one approach. What if we distributed the production across thousands of smaller facilities? What if we used different methods simultaneously instead of trying to perfect one method? That would be inefficient, Sentinel noted. Redundant effort across multiple approach vectors. Efficiency doesn't matter if we fail, Ji-won countered. I'd rather have 10 different methods that each produce 10% of what we need than one perfect method that produces 0% because we couldn't perfect it in time. The approach was pure human chaos. It violated every principle of organized research, but it worked. By day 7, they had 17 different production methods in various stages of development. Some used particle collision, others used quantum field manipulation. A few tried biological synthesis. Most failed, but some produced results. Captain Daeho visited the complex every day, checking on the team. He found Ji-won on day 10, surrounded by three-dimensional models of particle interactions, muttering to herself in Korean while simultaneously explaining concepts to a Corvan engineer. How are we doing? He asked. She looked up and he was shocked at how exhausted she looked. We're at about 7% of required production. Sentinel says our odds of success are now at 15%. We're improving, but not fast enough. What do you need? A miracle, she said, then laughed bitterly. Or about 500 more particle accelerators in 3 months we don't have. Daeho pulled up a chair and sat beside her. Tell me about Earth, she blinked. What? When you showed the Queen Mind Earth's history, what specifically did you show? The extinction events. The ice ages, the asteroid strikes. Why, did you show the solutions? How we survived each one? Ji-won thought about it. Not specifically. Just that we did survive. There's your problem, Daeho said. You're focusing on the scale of the challenge. Focus instead on the pattern of human solutions. He stood and addressed the room, his voice carrying authority. Everyone listen. Stop what you're doing for 10 minutes. The researchers looked up, confused. Dr. Choi, tell everyone how humanity survived the KT extinction event. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. We didn't, Ji-won said. We didn't exist yet. Exactly. But our mammal ancestors did. They survived by being small, by going underground, by adapting to eating things the dinosaurs couldn't. They didn't try to be better dinosaurs. They found a completely different way to survive. He moved through the lab, his energy infectious. When Earth faced the Ice Age, we didn't try to melt the ice. We learned to use fire. When we faced the plague, we didn't try to out-reproduce the disease. We invented medicine. We never solve problems by doing what the problem expects. We go around it, under it, through it, sideways. Young Sunho, who had been helping coordinate communications, suddenly sat up straight. Captain, I think I understand. We're trying to create exotic matter the way the Velthar consume it. But what if we created it differently? What if we changed what exotic matter is? Explain, Sentinel requested. The Velthar need exotic matter because their biology processes it for energy. But energy is energy. What if we could modify their biology to process a different kind of matter? Or what if we could create a synthetic exotic matter that their systems would accept but that we could produce more easily? The room fell silent. Then Ji-won started laughing. It was the slightly manic laugh of someone who had been awake too long and just heard something brilliant. That's insane, she said. We'd have to modify the biology of an entire species. We don't even know if the Queen Mind would agree to it. Only one way to find out, Daeho said. Let's ask. The communication with the Queen Mind happened on day 14. Ji-won, exhausted but determined, opened a neural link from the research facility. The Queen Mind's vast consciousness filled the connection, and this time Ji-won was ready for it. We have a proposal, she said through the link. We can't create enough natural exotic matter in time. But we might be able to modify your biology to process synthetic exotic matter, which we can produce in much larger quantities. The Queen Mind's response was immediate and negative. You want to change what we are? This is unacceptable. You already changed what you were, Jiwan countered. You became a swarm to survive. You consumed civilizations to survive. All we're asking is one more adaptation. The smallest one yet, actually. Just modifying a few metabolic pathways. And if this modification fails, if our biology rejects the synthetic matter, then you're no worse off than you are now, Deho said, joining the link. But if it works, you get to stop being monsters. Isn't that worth the risk? The Queen Mind was silent for a long time. Finally, you would modify our entire species based on hope? That's what we do best, Jiwan said simply. On day 16, the Queen Mind agreed to send a single vessel to Arcturus for biological testing. The ship arrived with a delegation of Velthar, and for the first time the Council species met the swarm face-to-face without weapons drawn. The Velthar were terrifying up close. But they were also curious. They asked questions. They examined the research. They seemed in their alien way hopeful. Minho, who had been helping design the production facilities, found himself working alongside a Velthar engineer. The creature communicated through biological radio, which translators rendered into Galactic Standard.
Why do you help us?
The Velthar asked. We consumed 3 of your colony worlds before the ceasefire. We killed millions of humans. Minho was quiet for a moment. Because you're not evil. You're desperate. And I've been desperate enough to do terrible things to survive. The difference between us is that someone gave me a second chance. I figure you deserve one too. The biological modifications were completed on day 23. The test was simple. Feed a single Velthar the synthetic exotic matter and monitor their vital signs. If their biology accepted it, the solution worked. If not, they were back to having no answers with 7 days left. The entire research complex watched as the Velthar volunteer consumed the first batch of synthetic matter. Seconds passed, minutes, hours. On hour 6, the Velthar's biological signals stabilized. The synthetic matter was working. The complex erupted in celebration. Species that had never touched each other were embracing. Sentinel, for the first time in its existence, used an expression of emotion. Well done. But the celebration was premature. They had proven the concept worked. Now they had to produce enough for an entire fleet in 7 days. Sentinel, Jiwan asked, her voice hoarse with exhaustion. Updated probability. With all species contributing maximum resources, 47% chance of producing sufficient synthetic exotic matter within deadline. Not good enough, Deho said. We need better odds. Then we need more production, Jiwan replied. Every facility, every resource, everything we have. Admiral Hyun stepped forward. You have it. Every council world will contribute their industrial capacity. If we fail together, but we will not fail for lack of trying. The final 7 days were a blur of frantic activity. Production facilities appeared across dozens of star systems. Cargo vessels ran constant supply lines. The entire Galactic Council economy shifted to support one goal: feed the swarm. Yuna flew more supply runs than anyone thought humanly possible, grabbing rest and quick naps during her ship's autopilot sequences. Young Sun-Ho coordinated communications across hundreds of facilities, his teenage voice somehow keeping thousands of researchers organized. Counselor Vexthra, who had spent his life studying species, now worked alongside them all, fascinated by how the crisis had unified everyone. On day 29, they had produced 70% of the required amount. Close but not enough. The facilities were running at maximum capacity. They couldn't increase production further. We're going to be short, Jiwan admitted, her voice breaking. We gave it everything. It's not enough. Sentinel's voice cut through her despair. Update. The Queen Mind has transmitted new biological data. The modifications have been more efficient than calculated. The Velthar now require only 72% of original exotic matter intake. Current production exceeds new requirements by 4%. The research complex went quiet. We did it? Someone whispered. We did it, Jiwan confirmed, and then she started crying. Happy tears, relieved tears, exhausted tears. Around her, species from across the galaxy celebrated in their own ways. Some cheered, some sang. Some simply collapsed in relief. On day 30, the first shipment of synthetic exotic matter reached the Velthar fleet. The Queen Mind tested it, distributed it, and for the first time in millennia, fed without consuming a world. It works, the Queen Mind transmitted to the Council. You have kept your promise. We will keep ours. The swarm will not consume another civilization. The formal ceremony happened a week later. The Queen Mind sent a delegation to join the Galactic Council as its 48th member species. The Velthar representatives walked into the council chamber, and every species present stood in respect. Admiral Hyun addressed the assembly. 32 days ago, we faced extinction. The probability of survival was 0. One species saw those odds and said, "Perfect. Today we welcome our former enemy as our newest ally. This is the human way. This is what hope accomplishes." Captain Daiho, promoted to admiral by unanimous vote, stood before the council. We didn't win because we were strong. We didn't win because we were smart. We won because we refused to accept that we couldn't win. That's the human factor. That's what we bring to the galaxy. Counselor Vexthra approached him after the ceremony. Admiral, I have completed my study of human psychology. I have a question. Ask. When Sentinel calculated 0.0001% odds, were you truly confident? Or were you simply unwilling to give up? Daiho smiled. Both. Humans have a saying, hope is not a strategy. But for us, hope is the strategy. We hope and then we work until reality matches our hope. That's illogical. Yes, Daiho agreed. But it works. Months later, the Arcturus system had become a symbol of something new. The Human Integration Program led by Yuna and Sunho taught other species how to think like humans when facing impossible challenges. Minho ran training exercises showing alien militaries how to use unconventional tactics. Jiwan led research teams mixing human chaos with alien precision. The Velthar, no longer needing to consume, began sharing their own unique perspectives. Their hive-mind coordination combined with human individual creativity produced innovations neither could achieve alone. Sentinel 2 had learned something. The AI's final report on the incident became required reading across the galaxy. Conclusion: mathematical probability describes what should happen based on past data. Human determination describes what will happen regardless of past data. When facing 0% odds, consult a human. They specialize in the impossible. In her lab, G1 kept a small plaque on her desk. It was a gift from Daiho, inscribed with words that had become something of a motto for humanity's place in the galaxy. The AI calculated a 0.0011% chance of victory. The human said, "Perfect odds," because that was the truth of it. Humans didn't see impossible odds as a reason to quit. They saw them as a challenge to overcome. They saw them as permission to try the insane, the reckless, the brilliant. They saw them as perfect,